Okay, good morning, everyone. We are running a little bit late.
Estamos un poco retrasados.
My name is Asoka Jayaratne.
Soy Sasoko Jayaratne. Soy especialista del agua en Australia. Así estaré moderando aquí. Mi colega se va a presentar.
Buenos días a todos. Bom dia. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Lo dije en 3 idiomas.
Muchas gracias por venir a esta presentación. Mi nombre es Marcos David Sousa. Yo soy de Brasil y trabajo con NSF. Soy especialista en agua hace más de 46 años y es un gran gusto estar con ustedes. Cualquier cosa nos preguntan. ¿Okay? Vamos a empezar el día de hoy. Okay? Gracias.
Thank you, Marcos. It's English, Spanish, English, Spanish.
Muchas gracias, Marcos.
Yes, so this session is about safe water and public infrastructure and buildings, resilient water
sobre la seguridad del agua en edificios e infraestructuras públicas.
The water supply is responsibility to supply water to the customer at the customer meter and then goes through the buildings.
Es la responsabilidad de los edificios que nos proporcionan el agua. En muchos casos, proporcionarnos agua segura y muchas veces esto es un gran desafío porque hay muchos problemas y la seguridad del agua, quizás muchos sepan, hay varias publicaciones sobre la seguridad en estos tipos de edificios, así que estoy muy contento de presentar esta sesión. Voy a presentar a 5 oradores que van a tener 20 minutos y en realidad serán 15 para hablar y 5 para preguntas. Así que les pido por favor que se ajusten al tiempo. La primera oradora será Soledad Martínez de Uruguay, que hablará sobre la caracterización microbiana de los sistemas secundarios de distribución de agua potable en Uruguay. Ella viene de la Facultad de Química de la Universidad de la República y se especializa en estudios de microbioma y sistemas de agua potable. Además, ha estado trabajando en la facultad, en los sistemas de agua, en los últimos 9 años. Así que, bienvenida, Soledad.
Okay, good morning everyone. I'm going to continue in Spanish, okay?
Días a todos.
Les voy a contar hoy sobre un poco del trabajo o parte del trabajo que estamos llevando a cabo en la Facultad de Química y en el área de microbiología de la Unidad de Análisis de Agua sobre la microbiología de los sistemas secundarios de distribución de agua potable. Y es por eso que está bueno empezar esta presentación con la definición de agua potable. En Uruguay está definida por decreto y dice que es el agua apta para consumo humano que no genera daños en el consumidor durante toda su vida y tampoco produzca ningún tipo de rechazo por parte del mismo. En Uruguay, el 99% de la población tiene acceso a agua potable. Como escuchamos hoy anteriormente en las presentaciones, el organismo que potabiliza y distribuye el agua en Uruguay es OCE, y esta agua es distribuida mediante los sistemas primarios, principalmente de distribución por redes de distribución subterráneas, que son básicamente cañerías de gran calibre, y esta agua llega hasta nuestros hogares, hasta nuestros edificios de esa forma. Pero una vez que ingresa a nuestros edificios, pasa a lo que se llama los sistemas secundarios de distribución, para luego llegar a salir por la canilla, que es lo que realmente nosotros coloquialmente creemos que es el agua potable. Como les dije, es acá donde empieza a jugar un rol importante los sistemas secundarios de distribución. ¿Y qué son los sistemas secundarios secundarios, a que le llamamos sistemas secundarios, son todas las infraestructuras dentro de los edificios que distribuyen el agua, almacenan el agua, aseguran que en el edificio haya presión adecuada de agua. Pueden ser las cañerías de menor calibre, bombas y tanques. Y es acá donde nosotros nos vamos a enfocar el estudio de los tanques, ya que son las infraestructuras más grandes en estos edificios, realmente ampliamente utilizadas. Si van caminando por la ciudad y miran a los techos, van a ver los tanques arriba de los edificios, no solo en edificios altos, sino que se están usando también en casas y en zonas urbanas y en zonas rurales. Pero están utilizados, están buenos, están útiles, pero tienen algunas características negativas, como por ejemplo que el agua puede estar retenida en los tanques durante mucho tiempo, por baja demanda, por ejemplo, o porque realmente se usan para almacenar. Como están expuestos están generalmente en el techo, están expuestos al ambiente, están expuestos a altas temperaturas y por su forma de su estructura y sus materiales generalmente tienden a la formación de sedimentos y formación de biofilms microbianos en los sedimentos y en las paredes del tanque. Además, en estas infraestructuras se pierde el desinfectante residual. En Uruguay usamos cloro como desinfectante residual en la red, pero en estos sistemas se pierde ese cloro, baja la concentración de cloro y el objetivo de este desinfectante residual pierde un poco el rol importante en estos sistemas. Y todo esto hace que se produzca un crecimiento microbiano, un recrecimiento microbiano en estos sistemas. Y todo esto lleva a una degradación de la calidad del agua y principalmente una degradación microbiológica del agua. Y es ahí a donde nosotros queremos hacer foco y queríamos empezar un poco a investigar en nuestro país para desarrollar mejores herramientas y nuevas herramientas de monitoreo y gestión de estos sistemas. Y nos hicimos para esto, en un principio, preguntas como si el agua en estos sistemas, la calidad del agua microbiológica realmente sea afectada y luego de pasar por estos sistemas sigue siendo apta para consumo. Y luego otras preguntas como qué microorganismos están en esos sistemas, en los biofilms, en los sedimentos, en el agua, cómo se intercambian entre las diferentes fases. Y por último, si estos sistemas podrían ser reservorio de patógenos oportunistas como nuevos, de alguna forma, indicadores. Entonces, para abordar esto, nos planteamos trabajar con sistemas, básicamente tanques elevados de cemento de diferentes edificios, edificios hospitalarios, residenciales y universitarios. Los muestreos los hacíamos como necesitamos acceder al tanque para tomar las muestras de las paredes, del sedimento, los hacíamos inmediatamente antes de las limpiezas. En Uruguay se recomienda limpiar anualmente los tanques en general y los hospitales cada 6 meses. Entonces, antes de la limpieza, entramos a tomar muestras, como les dije, agua, biofilm y sedimento. Y luego propusimos evaluar estas fases, estas matrices por el agua, basándonos en la norma UNIC 833, que es la norma que establece requisitos para el agua potable en Uruguay. Entonces empezamos por parámetros físico-químicos básicos de rutina y parámetros microbiológicos obligatorios también de rutina. Y después una parte un poco más o menos tradicional de repente, basada en técnicas de biología molecular un poco actuales, como es la PCR en tiempo real para buscar patógenos oportunistas, y la secuenciación de las comunidades microbianas para evaluar qué microorganismos estaban presentes en esas matrices y en qué proporción. Los sitios de muestreo fueron todos elegidos básicamente en el centro de la ciudad de Montevideo. Trabajamos con 5 edificios residenciales, 2 hospitalarios y un universitario en el periodo de 2018 a 2023, pre-crisis hídrica. Empezando con los resultados, cuando fuimos a evaluar los parámetros microbiológicos para evaluar la calidad microbiológica del agua de esos tanques, en el 91% de las muestras analizadas, algunos de los parámetros exigidos por normativa para establecer la aptitud del agua estaban incumpliendo la normativa. En cuanto y de esos, entre los hospitales, uno de los 3 hospitales o de las 3 muestras hospitalarias de agua que tuvimos no cumplió. Después, los parámetros físico-químicos del agua, solo el 20% no cumplieron y nosotros analizamos solo turbidez, pH y cloro. cabe destacar que el cloro no tenemos un valor permitido mínimo en nuestra normativa y todas las aguas analizadas tuvieron valores recomendados por debajo de lo que reportados por debajo de lo que recomienda el CS. Después, para biofilm y sedimentos no hay normativa para buscar ningún indicador de calidad microbiológica en estas matrices, pero nosotros adaptamos las técnicas que teníamos reportadas para agua para estas matrices y encontramos presencia de indicadores de mala calidad de agua microbiológica en el 50% de los biofilms analizados y en el 92% de los sedimentos. Cuando fuimos ahora sí a mirar la comunidad microbiana, es decir, qué microorganismos están presentes o cuántos microorganismos están presentes, en qué proporción, evaluamos dos índices, el índice de Cao y el índice de Shannon, que son el primero para evaluar riqueza, es decir, qué cantidad de microorganismos tenemos presentes, y el índice de Shannon para evaluar la diversidad, a ver cómo esos microorganismos se distribuyen. Cuando fuimos a mirar en el primer índice, que es el que le muestro ahí con colores, perdón, vemos que ay, perdón. Esto no se va.
This is not working properly.
Ahí. Perdón. Fuimos a ver que las muestras, tanto de agua como de biofilm y sedimento, tenían una riqueza similar, es decir, que la cantidad de microorganismos en las diferentes matrices era muy similar. Cuando vamos a ver la diversidad, que es cómo se distribuyen esos microorganismos, lo que vemos es, en el segundo gráfico, vemos que los biofilms y los sedimentos, que están más hacia la derecha, hacia la izquierda, perdón, de su derecha, tienen una diversidad mayor, es decir, que los microorganismos que tenemos están igualmente representados y en el agua una diversidad menor, es decir, que hay algunos microorganismos que son más abundantes. Si bien son los mismos, de repente hay algunos que son más abundantes. Y cuando fuimos a mirar estos gráficos también vimos que habían unas muestras que tenían una riqueza y una diversidad bastante menor que el resto y nos desayunamos que era el edificio residencial 4. El edificio residencial 4 estaba pintado. Yo les dije que trabajamos todos con tanques de cemento y no pintados. Este en específico estaba pintado y entonces tiene una riqueza y una diversidad microbiana en todas sus muestras, agua, biofilm y sedimento, menor que el resto. Y esto, agregándole los hospitales, que yo les dije que los hospitales se limpian cada 6 meses, vimos que en biofilm y en sedimento también teníamos riquezas y diversidades menores que en la media del resto de las muestras de los edificios residenciales y universitarios. Cuando fuimos a agrupar estas muestras por similitud, vimos un grupito ahí abajo de muestras que también se apartaban del resto de las muestras que eran muy similares en la comunidad microbiana y también nos desayunamos que este era el edificio 4. El pintado tenía una comunidad microbiana un poco distinta. Perdón, pero está trancado. Ahí. Cuando vamos a ver los perfiles de los microorganismos, es decir, los microorganismos más representados, más abundantes en estas comunidades, generamos estos gráficos de barras que nos van a indicar qué microorganismos son los más abundantes, en este caso los 25 más abundantes, y en qué proporción. Cuando vamos a mirar esto, vemos que son los mismos microorganismos para todos los tipos de edificios que están presentes como los más abundantes, pero la proporción cambia. Y lo que vemos además... Perdón, pero esto se mueve. Lo que vemos además es que los microbiomas, en este caso las comunidades bacterianas, son muy similares entre agua, biofilm y sedimento, pero van a depender del tanque, van a ser como tanque dependiente, no son iguales en todos los tanques. Si bien tienen los mismos microorganismos, el perfil de esa comunidad es un poco diferente. Y cuando fuimos a mirar los patógenos oportunistas, que buscamos algunos reportados en bibliografía, vimos presencia de algunos géneros que pueden albergar patógenos oportunistas como es Mycobacterium spp, Pseudomonas aeruginosa y Acanthamium. Y cuando fuimos a mirar la comunidad fúngica, que es algo que no se mira mucho habitualmente, vimos que los hongos son igualmente ricos e igualmente diversos en las tres matrices, pero son mucho menos ricos y mucho menos diversos que la comunidad bacteriana. Y cuando fuimos a hacer los perfiles, vimos que hay una diversidad, al contrario de lo que uno piensa, hay una diversidad y una riqueza grande de hongos en las muestras y vimos presencia de algunos géneros que podrían albergar algunos patógenos oportunistas, como Aspergillus, Malassezia, Candida y Rhodotorula. Y como final nos hicimos una pregunta, bueno, ya tenemos, miramos un poco lo que son las comunidades bacterianas y fúngicas, y nos hicimos una pregunta. En todos los tanques, más o menos el agua, el biofilm de sedimento, la comunidad bacteriana es muy similar. ¿Qué pasa cuando la comparo con el agua de red? Si ven a la izquierda, lo que está como más rosadito es el agua de red, y lo que tenemos más hacia acá, que lo recuadré, es agua en el medio, agua de tanque, y más hacia la punta el sedimento de ese mismo tanque. Lo que vemos que la comunidad bacteriana del agua de tanque se parece mucho más al sedimento, que si queremos un poco más, si queremos decirlo así vulgarmente, un poco más sucio, que al agua de entrada. Por lo tanto, estos sistemas están afectando realmente la microbiología del agua. Entonces, como conclusiones, en cuanto a turbidez y pH, que son dos de los parámetros físico-químicos que medimos, solo el 20% no cumplió al final de los tanques analizados, el agua de los tanques analizados. En cuanto al cloro libre, está muy por debajo en los tanques, realmente confirmamos que está muy por debajo, o sea que el desinfectante residual que se utiliza para controlar los microorganismos en estos tanques deja de estar y por lo tanto no se puede controlar de esa forma. Y en cuanto a la microbiología por cultivo de rutina, determinamos que el 90%, más del 90% de los casos, el agua antes de la limpieza no estaba apta para consumo. Y eso nos despierta una pregunta, y es ¿cuándo deja de estar apta para consumo? Y en cuanto al microbioma, vimos que las comunidades bacterianas, la del agua, biofilm y sedimentos son igual de ricas, son muy similares entre sí. El agua tiende a parecerse a su biofilm y el sedimento del tanque, pero son menos diversas. En cuanto a las comunidades fúngicas, no teníamos resultados significativos que fueran diferentes. En cuanto al tanque pintado, realmente la comunidad de ese tanque era diferente, y además hay algo que no le dije. En ese tanque no obtuvimos incumplimientos en el agua al año al momento de la limpieza. Y el tanque podría ser reservorio en esto de que se degrada la calidad del agua de patógenos oportunistas. Entonces finalizamos con algunas recomendaciones o preguntas o puntapiés para seguir avanzando en investigación, y es, por ejemplo, la propuesta de que los tanques de cemento se limpien más frecuentemente en vez de anuales, semianuales, o una alternativa a hacer esta limpieza semianual, que de repente son muchas limpiezas y mucho esfuerzo de realizar estas limpiezas, hacer una alternativa, por ejemplo, clorados o uso de desinfectante residual durante el año, por ejemplo, y sobre todo en los meses de verano, que aumentan las temperaturas y favorecen el crecimiento. ¿Qué tal evaluar la pintura de estos tanques? Porque tal vez es beneficiosa y propicia que no haya una degradación del punto de vista microbiano. Y evaluar otros materiales, como por ejemplo ahora se están usando mucho los tanques de polietileno. Y bueno, final. Gracias para todos, gracias por escuchar, gracias a las agencias financiadoras, a los lugares en los que estamos trabajando y los que han apoyado. Gracias.
Microphone.
Soundproof. No, I try to not save time. Thanks, Olga. That's an interesting presentation. We've got time for a few questions.
Tenemos tiempo para algunas preguntas.
Muy buena la presentación.
Very good presentation. I have a very big experience in Brazil regarding this topic, and everything that you're speaking about is exactly what happens not only in your little study, but also in the whole systems that have a water reservoir. In Brazil right now we are using the secondary chlorination because it is the only way, or one of the ways, to improve the microbiological part. And in Brazil, we now have a legislation that says that all the material that has contact with drinking water has to have an international certification, because painting and other things can damage water with contamination that's a bit complicated. So this is a very good job. We're going to speak on Friday about the safety plan in water, because people forget sometimes that inside it's a bit more complicated than outside. So excellent presentation. Thank you.
En español puede ser. Bueno, también me parece una excelente presentación.
I think that this is an excellent presentation. I just wanted to ask one thing. Did you evaluate the time of the water in the tanks? I can't listen to her properly, I'm sorry. What I was telling you is that in this test we just evaluated them after 1 year of use, but tomorrow I'm going to tell you about a longitudinal test that we did, and here we do have a presence of indicators that identify the use of water with treatment. Thank you.
Time for one more question.
¿Tenemos tiempo para una más?
Oh, good. I have a question, but I'll talk to you later. It's a long question. Maybe I didn't understand with the interpretation, but that's excellent presentation. Please join me in thanking Soledad for the excellent presentation. All right. Next up is Robert Norenberg from the US. Robert's going to talk about effect of demands, stochasticity on microbial quality of water in premise plumbing systems. Robert is a professor of environmental engineering at the University of Notre Dame in the United States. His research addresses biofilms in water and wastewater treatment systems. Over to you, Robert.
Great. Well, thank you for the introduction. And before starting, I'd like to acknowledge the people that worked on this. So especially Emily Clements was a doctoral student. And what I'm presenting today was 3 chapters of her dissertation. And also some colleagues who also assisted on this research. So as we all know, we treat water at the treatment plant, and then we send it out into the distribution system, and the water quality can decline. It can decline because we have decay of the disinfectant. We can have increase in temperatures, which also affects the disinfectants. We can have leaching of metals or other compounds from the pipes and formation of biofilms. So all these things can degrade. And the more time the water resides in the pipes, the more likely the quality will decay. So often we can use the water age as an indicator of the quality of the water, where if the age is very high, probably the quality is poor. And if this is a schematic of a treatment system, we have the treatment plant on the left, and then we have the distribution system where the water is conveyed through the streets to the homes. And then in these distribution systems, if we look at a pipe and look at the water flowing through the pipe, we can see here on the left that maybe there's low flow at night and higher flows during the day. So the water age in those pipes can vary over the course of the day. So here we're showing at a given location the age of water in the pipe. As Soledad said, though, in the homes where the water is supplied, once the water enters the home, it's kind of your problem, like it's your water, and if you don't use the water, it can be in the pipes for a very long time. So again, imagine here's the plumbing in your home, and in this pipe, if you don't turn on the tap at the sink, the water just stays there until you turn it on. So this might look like the demand or the flows of water over the day, where we have zero flow for long times. And here, this is what the water age might look like in your pipe. So when it's not being used, the age increases until you open the tap, and then it comes down. So I would pose that in the drinking water distribution system with the big pipes serving many people, there's always some flow. So the water age might increase or might decrease, but not that much. But in the home, it changes a lot. And if we look at the average for the distribution system, maybe it's okay. But if we look at the average for the premise plumbing system, maybe we're missing some important events that reflect poor quality. So what we did in this study was try to characterize the effects of this variability in water demands. So we did 3 studies, and I'll quickly go over each of these. In one, we tried to characterize based on the stochastic water demands, because I didn't mention, but the water use is a stochastic process. Who knows? Maybe we take a shower one day and we go away for the weekend, and the shower doesn't get used for 2 or 3 days. It's a random process. So considering the stochastic water demands within a home, we wanted to characterize the extreme water ages. In the second study, the effect of using automatic purging devices. So if we have a means to automatically use water on a periodic basis, maybe that can prevent long ages. And finally, instead of directly looking at water age, we looked at the chlorine residual. Again, this is a modeling study. All 3 are actually modeling studies. But we looked at the chlorine instead of the age, because chlorine maybe is a better indicator for microbial quality. So the purpose of this study was just to provide tools, because in the end, each home is different, each water demands are different, but maybe with tools we can see what are the impacts of maybe having high-efficiency water devices that use little water. Is that going to impact the water ages a lot? Or maybe if we have 2 people instead of 4 people living in the home, how will that affect the age? Okay. Actually, all 3 studies were published in the last year. So if you're interested, you can find these to find out more information. So the first study was to try to characterize the extreme ages. So if you're a civil engineer maybe and study flooding, like rain, precipitation, you probably heard of these intensity, duration, frequency curves, where they try to gather historic information and use that information to determine the likelihood of an extreme event. So imagine here, this is the return period from 1 year to 200 years. What's the maximum flood that's likely to occur, let's say, every year? So within 1 year, it's likely to have a small flood. But if we consider 100 years, what's the maximum amount of water that might come in 100 years? Well, every 100 years, we might get a really big flood. So you can see that for 100 years, there's a much higher flow. This is for hydrology. So we used a similar approach for the drinking water. So yeah, again, these are observed values, and then we extrapolate for 200 years because we don't have that much information. So basically, with this generalized extreme value analysis, we take the maximum values, we fit them to a distribution, and then we develop confidence bounds and exceedance probabilities. So I'll show you in a second. In this study, we used a hydraulic model, EPANet, and we fed demands into that model based on a very nice tool developed by some researchers in the Netherlands. The company's, or the research institute's called KWR, and the program's called SimDeum. It's basically a stochastic water demand generator. So you tell it what kind of house it is, how many people there are, if they work at home or work at somewhere else, and it will give you a time series of water demands for the different fixtures, for the bathroom, the shower, the washing machine, And you can put that into your model. So it's a really nice tool. You can contact them and they'll share this with you if you're interested. So we took a single configuration of a home. So here's the distribution system. It feeds to the home. We have a bathroom, we have a kitchen, dishwasher, and so on, washing machine. And we assigned to these different fixtures a time series of water demands, and then used the model, EPANet, to calculate the water ages. So again, these demands are every 10 seconds, and we reported the water ages every 15 minutes for over a year. And we studied different conditions. So we studied low flow conditions, so I guess this is our baseline condition. And for low flow, we basically put a multiplier, like 0.1. So all the demands came down. We didn't try to just pick one. We just scaled all of them down. And we also did the same for high flows, where we just increased all the demands. And we looked at the effect on the water ages. We also looked at the effect of occupancy of one person or two people. So this is just an example of the output. And you can see here, these are the water ages over time. If it's not being used, the age increases. When it gets used, the age comes down. And this is, as an example, for the bathroom, we have a box plot where you can see the average water ages, the 50%, the 75%, and the outliers. This is in hours, and this is for the baseline, for just the regular demands. If we have lower demands, the water age increases, and we see even higher extreme demands. So interesting fact, if you use water-efficient devices in your home, you might be creating water problems, water quality problems. For the higher demands, though, there wasn't a big impact, because once you flush the system, using more water won't decrease the water age anymore. It goes to zero. And then this is two people versus one person. You can see the one person increased the water age because the fixtures are used less frequently. And this is just a table of the exceedance probabilities. And just as an example, over a course of 30 days, with a 10% probability of occurrence, you can see for the shower, there's a water age of 57, so there's a 10% probability we'll have more than 57 hours. For the one person, it was 80 hours. So again, it's a tool that we can use to see these impacts. The second study was looking at the impact of purging devices. Purging devices, every 12 hours or 24 hours, turn on the fixture. And I won't talk about this because it's kind of obvious, that water ages will not be high. So again, if we implement these purging devices, with no purging, we can have large water ages. With 24 hours purging, the ages will decrease a lot. The interesting fact, though, it doesn't take that much water. So using these purging devices doesn't consume so much water. So, I guess you're wasting water, but you're not wasting that much water, and you can lower the age. So the third study was the same sort of thing, but looking at the chlorine residuals. And again, using the same model and the stochastic demands, we measured or predicted the chlorine increases when we use the fixture, and over time it dissipates. So we use several tools to study. If we add the purging, we don't have such low chlorine concentrations, and we can plot this in several ways. We can look at the chlorine concentration at the beginning of our use, so that's one way to look at it. We can look at the fraction of time with low chlorine concentrations, or we can look at how long we have low chlorine. For the development of biofilms, maybe it's more important how long we have with no chlorine than what % of time without chlorine. And again, I won't go over the details because I'm a little bit slow on time here, but we were able to look at the different scenarios using this tool. So, in summary, I guess for this chlorine, the purging helps maintain a higher chlorine residual. Higher occupancy, not surprisingly, also helps with a higher residual. And overall, this provides some tools or a methodology to assess water ages considering stochastic demands. We can use it to look at different scenarios and see which ones are better or worse. And I just threw in some propaganda here. We also looked at models for actual biofilm and planktonic growth formation in pipes with the stochastic demands. And we also did some experiments looking at biofilm formation in shower hoses. But this may be the next conference. I'll hopefully be able to talk. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Robert. Questions for Robert? Come on, you must have some questions. Not anywhere near the lunchtime, so. No? I have a question. So you know, when you increase the flow, the water age reduces, you get the chlorine penetration. So great, you've done the modeling. So what's the practical application, say, to prevent, or not prevent, to minimize the occurrence of opportunistic pathogens? And you mentioned that the other question is, you mentioned 6% water loss. To me, that is huge. Right? I work in water supply. That's, if I'm a customer, I'll be really worried who's going to pay my bill. So did you actually consider these things in a practical sense? That's my question.
Well, I'm an academic, so I don't care about practical things. No, I'm just kidding. No, those are a great question. So I think water age is not a water quality parameter in itself. It's a surrogate. And it would be important to try to link water age to actual water quality. That way this model could make useful predictions. Right now it's not giving useful, it's just comparing, if things better or worse. And there's other researchers that have been trying to link water age to water quality, for example, in the distribution systems. The same could be done for a home. And as far as the 3% or 6% water usage, I guess everything has trade-offs. So you gain one thing and you lose others, and you have to make the decision which is more important. So
be able to use the purge water in a tank. And,
that's a great point.
Water the garden. Anyway, that's because I come from a continent which is the driest continent in the world, so every drop counts. Thanks for that clarification. Questions? No? All right. Cool. Please join me in thanking Robert for an interesting presentation.
First of all, I would like to thank the organizer for giving me the opportunities to present the recent Italian policy about the regulation of the internal buildings and the application of the risk analysis. Now it's a duty in Italy according to the new transposition. This is just a background slide about the water safety plan application according to the Drinking Water Directive that was implemented in Europe. This is the Drinking Water Recast. We have 4 different specific articles. The Article 10 is related to the risk assessment of a domestic distribution system, and it must be implemented by the 12th of January 2029 and reviewed every 6 years. About this application, we have some specific duty. The first one is a general analysis of the associated potential risk. The second one is looking for lead and Legionella in the premises, in particular in the priority premises, but not only them. And then the adoption of relevant measures to reduce the potential microbial risks and also the risk coming from the lead mainly. And another duty is for the member states that shall identify the priority premises. So every country in Europe have defined the meaning of priority premises, taking into account that priority premises are large non-household premises, where there are many people that could potentially be exposed to this risk. In Italy, we have carried out a roadmap about the water safety plan implementation. We started in 2009, and now we are continuing along this process. About 2025, we published an Italian guideline about the application of the water safety plan inside the buildings. And this guideline was made by working group, by a permanent group of experts, and then was submitted to the attention of other experts just to validate this guideline. The guideline has some aims, mainly identify the priority premises according to the Drinking Water Directive duty, and to support the water manager of indoor distribution water system. In Italy, we call the GD, which is an acronym for this definition. And this person could be the owner of the building, the administrator, or any person responsible for the internal distribution water system. And then to support the development of training documents for staff and consumers education. First of all, we started with the identification of the premises, the primary premises, taking into account the type of system, the volume of water supplied, the type and vulnerability of the occupants, also the seasonability and of the buildings, of the occupancy inside the buildings, the plant shutdown and the stagnation events that can affect, of course, the risk, the size and complexity of the system, the age of the building, and the control and risk management measures that are currently implemented. And we propose this classification, which is valid only in Italy. Every country in Europe can adopt a different system. In Italy, we have subdivided in these classes. In red, you can see just the priority buildings according to the Drinking Water Directive definition. One, the class E, are all the other premises. We have included also this kind of premise just to give some piece of advice to the occupancy. At the top, we have health, social, and social-medical facility in pension. That means hospitals and other kinds of buildings where people can stay for a few days or more. And then we have other medical facilities like the rehabilitation centers and dental centers and so on. Then we have hotel accommodation, penal institutions, passenger ships with desalination, stations, airports. Then we have public and collective catering, including company and school canteens. And then we have the last priority building according to our classification, and it relates to educational establishment with sport facilities, gyms, sport wellness centers, barracks, penal institutions, campsite, community facility. And the last one are all the other buildings, private buildings, mainly, but also offices. For the priority buildings, we have established some obligation. At the top, we have the implementation of the water safety plan. For the other three, B, C1 and C2, we have the implementation of a self-control plan, and for the last one of the priority buildings, we have the verification plan. we'll see the differences between these different approaches. And we have also some recommendations. In practice, the implementation of good hygiene practice manuals for most of them, and for the non-priority buildings, in particular for large buildings and vulnerable subjects, we also check for the prevention control measure, self-control plans, and the determination of Legionella species and Pneumophila. Starting from the first one class, that means the application of the water safety plan, we have the general principle of application of the water safety plan. In particular, about the choice of the team, we need a team leader with the GD mandate, that means the water water manager responsible for the internal distribution system. We have permanent members, additional members, holder of knowledge, and other people like representatives from the patients. And in Italy, we have also asked for the preparing a cloud. A cloud is a sort of repository where you can put every document, every map, so one site where you can find every kind of information that is necessary for the implementation of the water safety plan. Then we have the self-control plans and manuals that are required for the Class B and Class C buildings. In this case, it's required the description of the water system, the identification of hazard and hazardous events, control and monitoring measure, and the verification plan. It's a sort of a light version of water safety plan, not a complete implementation of the water safety plan. This is due to the expertise of people that are not present in these specific buildings. So we can't ask for the application of a complete water safety plan. People who are involved are the GD, a qualified expert, active involvement of the staff, the technical and scientific support from consultants, also, of course, the use of control laboratories for sampling and analysis, and the food business operators in case of catering facilities. About the good hygiene practice manual that can be, that can be used. The requirements is a manual that can be easy applied and understood by people who are involved in this process. And about the last one of the premises that are required for the implementation of this system, the Class D, it's required a verification plan with some requirements, specific requirements you can see in this slide, which are lighter than the previous system. So going from the Class A to the Class D, we are going to lighting the duty that the owner have to apply. This is slide about the people who are involved in implementing this system. And about the recurring problem, most of them were described in the water safety in buildings that was published by the WHO in 2011. Just a few slides, just to recall the problem related to the Legionella. You have to perform a specific analysis taking into account every effect on the growing of Legionella inside the buildings. And another aspect that was recently ruled by the European Commission is about the release of some elements, so migration in internal networks due to the contact between materials used in the system and the water. You have this kind of profile for every kind of elements and species, chemical species, that can be released in the water flow. And especially it's important to take into account the nickel release that mainly comes from the tap, chrome-plated taps, because we have some residues that are present inside the brass of the tap, but also from other devices like fittings, water meters, shut-off valves. And finally, another aspect is related to the release of lead, not only from the lead and seals, that pipes and seals made of lead, but also from not removing the zinc, sorry, from the brass. It's a sort of metal, alloy that contain lead inside the structure. And when it is heated, the lead migrates from the internal body, from the bulk, to the surface level. And so it behaves like a lead pipe. Now it's ruled, it's not allowed in the drinking water legislation. So I've just concluded. Thank you.
Thanks, Enrico. That is very interesting. It looks like you've actually thought about this, taken a step back, thought about it, developed a framework, and you're now trying to implement it. And you have given, I guess, the owners of all these premises until 2029. So these are not easy things to do. That is excellent. I think there's a lot of learnings, certainly for me. There's very interesting information. So we have time for questions.
Tenemos tiempo para preguntas.
Bettina.
Yes, thank you very much, Enrico, for that. Is it working? For that very interesting presentation. I found it interesting to see that you were addressing building installations and ships. Because in Germany we're also regulating mobile water supplies, but it's not an easy thing to do. So my main question would be, which ships do you cover? Is it just Italian ships, wherever they are going, or would, for example, foreign cruise ships that come to Italy also fall under this regulation?
We can apply just to the Italian ships because this part of the legislation is a national legislation. It's not a common legislation. But if some people want to use other ships inside Italy, they have to respect some rules, but not for every country, of course. As you know, some parts is a duty of the national provision, not a general provision across the Europe. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you. Any other questions? I shouldn't be asking too many questions as co-chair. This is really interesting as well. One of the ways to control, things like lead release or, chemicals from fittings is to actually control at the source. Is there anything in Italy or Europe to minimize or eliminate use of lead in fittings, like percentage of lead in the fittings that you buy from
en las partes que se
the
utilizan.
hardware center, for example. Is there anything in there?
At the moment, no, there's not a specific way to eliminate this, to contain, to reduce this migration. But recently we have applied at the European level a new legislation about materials in contact with drinking water. So in the near future, not now, in the near future, some kinds of alloys will not be allowable in the renewal or making new installations. For the past, of course, we have to wait for the renovation of the buildings, so a very long process, as you can imagine.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No more questions. Please thank me joining Enrico for an excellent presentation. All right, we've now got two more short presentations before lunch. So the next presentation is by Mariana Basia, right? Mariana is going to talk about BRT model to predict microbiological WQF, whatever it is, applied during 2023 Uruguayan water crisis. So Mariana is a graduate in chemistry and she works in the water analysis unit of the Faculty of Chemistry, University of República in Uruguay. So please welcome Mariana.
Good afternoon. My presentation will be in Spanish. Bueno, como muchos saben, dada la
As many of you know, given the importance of the access to safe water, we have national and international regulations that establish several parameters for health and acceptance. In Uruguay, the norm has the 833 norm as a basis, and then we have the URSEA that has a convention and a link with the chemistry university that analyzes water. We have some non-compliances that are a bit frequent. We define a non-compliance as an excess in one of those parameters or more than one. In Uruguay, we see this from Unit 833. In this work, we used a machine learning model and evaluated this model with data that we have from the Uruguayan water crisis during 2023. After 3 years of drought, in 2023, we had a water problem in the metropolitan area and Montevideo. These are some pictures that compare 2021 and 2023, or previous years and 2023 in those areas. In the work, what we did was we used the booster regression model and, this booster regression algorithm, and we used samples that we took in Montevideo and the metropolitan area that include La Paz, Las Piedras, Progreso, and Ciudad de la Costa from 2004 and 2024. And we had 1,261 samples. And we had 167 samples examples from 2023 water crisis period. We used physical, chemical variables such as turbidity, pH, and the potentiality of this water to maintain the microbial growth. We used these variables that had to do with climate, temperature, and the purification process. Once we developed the method, one of the results was how the different variables influence these different things. And the turbidity is the most influential variable.
En el que esta no fue la variable más influyente, si bien fue
in some other cases, this was not.
También para la evaluación de los datos lo que hicimos fue utilizar en realidad los datos los dividimos en una parte para generar el modelo y otra parte para esta evaluación.
To generate the models and the other one to evaluate.
Que es la curva
So we
de
use
característica operativa del
ROC
receptor
curve
que mide la frecuencia de falsos positivos, la frecuencia de verdaderos
positives and true positives,
el área bajo la curva
and
es de 0,5
if the area beneath the curve is
y si el área bajo la
0.5 is a
curva de
bad
1
predictor,
es perfecto
and
predictor.
if it is 1, it's a perfect predictor. And in this case, the data that we obtained was for the evaluation data set was 0.72, and in the Uruguayan water crisis data set, it was 0.5. So we found that the predictive capacity of the model was affected when we saw this data. This is important for the balance of data, and mainly and particularly for the non-compliances that were greater during the water crisis. As a conclusion, as we see in the model, the predictive capacity was affected when we challenged them with the water crisis of 2023. Nevertheless,
sirve para generar y evaluar cuáles son los elementos claves que afectan el sistema
the key elements that affect the system,
para la
and
generación de
it's
planes
still
de seguridad.
useful to generate safety plans. Thank you.
Thanks, Mariana. And maybe one
Gracias,
question
Mariana.
if you
Quizás
have
una
questions.
pregunta.
This is supposed to present. One question, yes.
No, muchas gracias por la presentación, muy buena.
Thank you for the presentation. I just wanted to ask you one thing.
¿Está fijado para puntos de muestreo con igual residencia del agua?
The model fixed for certain points, specific points? No, this is not contemplated.
Y la otra,
And the other question, during the crisis,
no recuerdo que haya habido discontinuidades de servicio.
was there a discontinuity in the service? There was not depressurization of the. No, thank you.
There are easy questions. Thanks, Mariana. Please join me in thanking Mariana.
Muchas gracias.
All right, our last presentation for the day is for the morning, before lunch, is from Juan Sueva Orjuela from Colombia. So Juan is from Leticia, capital of Colombia. He's a PhD candidate in engineering for the National University of Colombia and University of Barcelona. His research topics are water security, water quality, and water governance in the Amazon region. Over to you.
Hey, hello everyone. I would like to do my presentation in Spanish. I'm from Leticia, in the Amazon region, and specific, I am working with the Concept Water Security Framework. Before, yo estaba trabajando antes sobre el concepto de seguridad hídrica, lo trabajé.
I was working in the concept of water safety in Africa in a previous project, but right now I looked up if there were any other previous works in the Amazon River, and we saw that there's little work done in that zone, and so this research is to have a security framework in the Amazon River Basin. The Amazon River Basin has 7 million square kilometers, it's 40% of South America, and it is in 9 countries. In Colombia, it's 40% of the territory, and in the whole region, there are 40 million people living there. Of those 40 million people living, 2.2 million are indigenous people, representing more than 400 different ethnic groups, and these are multi-ethnic communities, and they belong to different ethnic groups. And a part of belonging to ethnic groups, they are part of big ethnic groups as well. This basin represents 20% of the world's freshwater discharge, and an average discharge of about 200,000 ms. And there's a contrast, because in the Amazon region we don't have drinking water. Why? Because there was an unplanned urbanization. We went from 2.5 million people in 1960 to 30 million in 2015. There are cities that have grown so much, such as Manaus in Brazil, and cities that have been growing steeply, such as Leticia. There's also deforestation because of agricultural, livestock, and urban expansion, and there's also pollution of the water sources. Then we have some climate phenomena. Last year we had a phenomenon that affected the Amazon zone, and so the rivers are much lower since last year. In Leticia, for example, there's been scarcity of water, in Peru as well. In Iquitos, 61% of the inhabitants don't have access to drinking water. And there's low access to drinking water in this zone, namely the Amazon River Basin. And so this is even greater with the changing climate. And last year, the water levels at the port of Manaus reached its lowest record since 1902, and there are different climate change scenarios. There's a 40 degrees Celsius temperature increase that will happen by 2070, and precipitation changes. And this is associated to climate and land use stresses that could push a tipping point as early as 2050. And what I'm doing in this research is I'm doing field work,
aportar
to
precisamente
be
en el contexto de la
able
literatura a nivel mundial de la seguridad hídrica y específicamente en la Amazonia. Y estamos trabajando en la ciudad de Leticia.
And we're
en
working
4
in Leticia
zonas,
in
contextos
4
muy
different
diferentes, en una
zones
zona
that have different
urbana, que es
contexts.
como
In
una
an
comunidad
urban
indígena de
zone,
Capiul, que los únicos que los integra es la
And,
Maloca o digamos donde ellos se reúnen, una zona
there's
periurbana que es de río,
peri-urban zone in Leticia
una zona muy
that's
de periurbana
from the
carretera
river.
que es Tigua y otra zona muy rural que es Itacoy. Evidenciando y tratando de identificar
And we are trying to
cuál es,
identify
cómo es la seguridad hídrica y
the water
nuestra
safety
evaluación.
and evaluating
Para este
this
contexto
in these
amazónico, como
different
le dije, por el
zones.
tema de la población, por todo el conocimiento, estamos integrando el conocimiento indígena,
We are
co-creando con
integrating
ellos,
indigenous
desarrollando el marco de la
knowledge.
seguridad
We
hídrica, y no
are
solamente con
developing
comunidades,
the
sino
framework
también
with
involucrando
themselves
sectores
and also
institucionales,
involving
academia y demás. Y para tratar de
institutional
introducir una
and
nueva
academia
definición de la seguridad
sectors.
hídrica,
And
evaluando el tiempo
we
presente
also
y el
want to
tiempo futuro
introduce a
con
new
escenarios de
definition of
cambio
water
climático.
safety,
Finalmente, la idea es obtener un índice
evaluating
de
the
seguridad
present
hídrica
and future.
y identificar también en esos
And we
a
also want to
futuro,
identify
cómo es la seguridad hídrica y
the
entendiendo desde la perspectiva del
safety
conocimiento
of the
indígena
water
cómo
in the
se puede
future
hacer
and the
esos procesos de
perspective of
adaptación.
the indigenous
Muchas gracias.
peoples and how we can make these adaptation processes. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. That's interesting. There's so much water in there, but people don't have access to safe water. It's very, what do you call it? It's a sad situation, isn't it, to have that much water, 200 cubic meters per second flowing into the river, but people, a fair percentage don't have drinking water. Yeah, one question before we're running a little bit late. One question if you want. Bettina.
Thank you. Sorry, it's me again. Thanks a lot for the presentation. And one thing I find really interesting is this bit of integrating indigenous knowledge. So could you maybe elaborate a bit more on that? What and how you're integrating this knowledge in the whole process?
Okay, the water security framework has 3 steps. The first step is co-creation with the framework water security, and I am working with that the difference in the 4 communities.
Y también la
4 communities
diferencia
is
con
indigenous
las
communities,
comunidades
indigenous people.
indígenas.
And first, we have
En primer lugar,
we will have an interview with that
tenemos una entrevista
identify that
en donde
what is the
identificamos
indigenous knowledge, what is the
cuál es la
use of the
sabiduría
water, what is the
indígena,
treatment of the water, what is
cuál es
the
el
cognitive
tratamiento de las
of the
aguas,
water, what is the, for example, the relation with the spiritual, with the water. We have a 6 or 8,
con el agua,
10 with
tenemos
the
6
indigenous knowledge specific in this case. For example,
parámetros.
in Leticia specific,
en Leticia,
there are communities
específicamente,
are
hay
multi-ethnic
comunidades,
because you can
comunidades que son
find water
multiétnicas.
security in Canada, in Australia, it's common to see
Y en
one
Australia es común
ethnia. But
ver
in
una
Leticia,
etnia,
you have
pero en
a
Leticia
6-10 multi-ethnies. And
tenemos más
we have
de una etnia, tenemos 6,
we're
10.
working with the process with the
Y también
different
estamos
etnias.
trabajando con
And
las diferentes
we have a
etnias en un
hypothesis
proceso y
when
tenemos
you can
diferentes hipótesis.
have different etnias, but
Podemos tener diferentes
is
etnias,
the same purpose, the same thing that they work together with the water. Yeah, is one the one mind, one. ¿Cómo dirías? It's like a. Yes, it's like it's different. It's multi-ethnic.
Es
But
multiétnica.
the hypothesis is
La hipótesis,
work with community.
pero
specific
queremos
with the
trabajar con
water,
las
with the
comunidades
necessities.
específicamente en cuanto al agua.
It's okay, the response? Okay.
¿Respondí bien?
All right. Yeah, so I think I won't take that long, hold you from lunch, but it's quite
Bien.
interesting
no quiero
diverse
demorando para el
presentations,
almuerzo,
practical
pero
research,
es bastante
some
interesante.
theoretical modeling works that can help in the end to do things differently
Pero es
in
muy
the
interesante
buildings,
hacer
and
cosas de
then
diferente
heard about some
manera,
interesting legislation,
tener,
legislative sort of
tenemos
approach
diferentes
or framework
perspectivas,
to
cómo se trabaja en
manage
edificios,
water
cómo se trabaja con
quality in the buildings.
legislaciones, en las
And,
Amazonas.
Interesting
Es muy
presentations on
interesante estas presentaciones.
various other topics, including the challenges in the Amazon.
Desafíos que tenemos en las
So
Amazonas.
please join
Así
me
que
in thanking
agradezcamos
all
a todos
the
los oradores.
presenters.